if I have to succeed, is complete nonsense, because the two situations are completely different.
After months of guarded optimism and carefully managed silence, the royal palace has finally spoken. King Charles and Prince William stepped forward with a sobering update on Catherine, shattering assumptions that the storm had passed. Behind composed faces were hints of strain, duty, and a family bracing itself once more. Courtiers murmured, supporters held their breath, and the nation felt the shift instantly, right now. So, why are the king and the heir breaking protocol now, and what does this moment reveal about the road ahead? When the palace finally spoke. For months, the silence from the palace had been deafening. Rumors filled the gaps where clarity once lived, and every public appearance, or absence, was dissected for meaning. Then, without warning, that silence broke. Not with ceremony or celebration, but with a tone that immediately signaled gravity. King Charles and Prince William stepped forward, not to offer routine reassurance, but to acknowledge, plainly and publicly, that Princess Catherine's journey was far from over. The moment Prince William spoke, the atmosphere shifted. His words did not circle the truth or soften its edges. He described 2024 as the hardest year we've ever had, a sentence that landed heavily because of who was saying it and what it implied. This was not a passing challenge or a temporary setback. Coming from a future king known for restraint, the admission carried a quiet urgency. It suggested that behind closed doors,
So my passion and the work of the Centre for Early Childhood stems from one essential truth.
the family had been navigating pressures far deeper than the public had been led to believe. King Charles followed with remarks that surprised many in their openness. He spoke of pride, deep personal pride in Catherine, and emphasized that the family remained in constant contact with her. It was not the language of distance or formality. It was the voice of a father and monarch acknowledging endurance in the face of ongoing struggle. The palace later reinforced this message, confirming that both the king and Queen Camilla remained unwavering in their support. The phrasing alone raised questions. Support had always been implied, but now it was being stated outright, as if to prepare the public for the understanding that this situation demanded more than patience. It demanded honesty. What made this moment so striking was not just what was said, but when it was said.
Now, I've heard this message repeatedly during my visits to cancer centers across the country.
Only months earlier, Catherine had announced that her cancer was in remission, a milestone that brought widespread relief. That announcement had felt like a turning point, a quiet promise that the darkest stretch was behind her. Many believed the family could finally exhale, yet these new comments reframed that hope. They revealed that remission did not mean resolution, and that recovery, even in its most hopeful phase, can still be fragile. This was not a carefully staged message designed to calm nerves. There was no attempt to over-explain or distract. Instead, the palace chose acknowledgement over comfort, clarity over quiet. In doing so, it raised a question that lingered beneath every word. Why now? Why break months of restraint unless something had shifted?
It is the most vulnerable, those with the fewest resources, and those who have done the least to cause climate change.
Unless the cost of silence had begun to outweigh the protection it once offered? The weight of that question hangs over every statement. It suggests a moment of reckoning, not just for the royal family, but for a public that has followed Catherine's journey with empathy and concern. When the palace speaks after such a long pause, it is rarely without reason. And in this case, the message was unmistakable. This is serious, this is ongoing, and it deserves to be understood with care, patience, and attention, because what lies ahead is still unfolding. And now, a secret long buried begins to surface, threatening everything they believed was safe. The truth beneath the relief. The words that followed the palace's long silence did more than acknowledge concern. They reshaped what the public thought it already knew. Only a few months earlier, there had been genuine relief when Princess Catherine announced that her cancer was in remission. The message, shared quietly but firmly, was received as a turning point. After a year marked by uncertainty and absence, it felt like a rare moment of light. Many believed the hardest part was finally behind her, that healing could now move forward without the shadow that had loomed since early 2024. But as Prince William began to speak more openly, that sense of closure slowly unraveled. He made it clear that remission did not mean the end of the fight. His words carried careful honesty.
Over the years, I've not talked enough about, our mother.
Never enough.
He's doing this campaign.
Explaining that Catherine continues to face intense physical and emotional strain as treatment and recovery move forward. Some days, he admitted, are manageable. Others are overwhelmingly difficult. It was a simple statement, but one that cut through assumptions and reminded everyone that recovery is rarely a straight path. What stood out was not merely the content of his words, but the unmistakable tone that carried them. There was no effort to soften the reality, no attempt to frame it as a temporary challenge or fleeting discomfort. William described an ongoing, demanding process, one that calls for patience, strength, and resilience, qualities Catherine has demonstrated time and again, though never without cost. The update revealed a quieter, more profound truth. Even in remission, her body and mind remain under constant pressure, still adapting, still fragile, still vulnerable to the subtle strains that accompany recovery. Then came King Charles' contribution, unexpected in both timing and depth. Known for his measured public remarks, the king spoke with personal warmth when addressing Catherine's situation.
Is complete nonsense because the two situations are completely different.
He expressed how deeply proud he was of her, not just for facing illness with grace, but for continuing to endure challenges that are often invisible to the outside world. He confirmed that the family remains in constant contact with her, a detail that carried weight. It suggested not distance, but closeness, an ongoing need for support rather than a return to normality. The palace later reinforced this message, noting that both the king and Queen Camilla remain unwavering in their support. While the statement was brief, its implications were not. Such reassurance would not be necessary if everything were fully settled. Instead, it hinted at a situation more layered than previously understood, one that requires continued care, attention, and discretion. Together, these admissions reframed the earlier announcement of remission. What once felt like an ending now appeared more like a pause, a hopeful moment within a longer, more complex journey. The relief was real, but it was incomplete. The struggle, as William confirmed.
And I felt, you're losing people every single time you have those headlines. We all get that there's a really big urgent message, and I'm not...
Is not over. As these details emerged, the public was left adjusting to a more nuanced reality. Catherine's strength remains undeniable, but so does the weight she continues to carry. The palace did not offer timelines or guarantees, only honesty. And in doing so, it shifted the focus from recovery as a destination to recovery as a process, one that is still unfolding, quietly and carefully, beyond the headlines. But how did years of hidden struggles shape Catherine's resilience? And what secret revelations now threaten to shift everything we thought we knew? Stay tuned. Strength, worn quietly, long before now. To truly understand why the palace's recent words carried such weight, it helps to look beyond the diagnosis that changed everything in early 2024 and trace the quieter history that came long before it. Princess Catherine's strength did not begin with cancer. It was forged over years of enduring physical hardship while maintaining a public image defined by calm, grace, and unwavering composure. Long before her illness became public knowledge, Catherine faced serious health challenges during each of her 3 pregnancies. She suffered from hyperemesis gravidarum, a severe and debilitating condition far beyond ordinary morning sickness. It left her violently ill, dangerously dehydrated, and physically exhausted. On multiple occasions, she was hospitalized, forcing sudden withdrawals from public duties and scheduled appearances. At times, when the world expected smiles and ceremonial presence, she was instead confined to recovery rooms.
It was thought that my condition was non-cancerous. The surgery was successful.
Struggling simply to regain strength. Even when she returned to public view, the toll was often visible to those who looked closely. She appeared pale, noticeably thinner, and fatigued, yet she continued to carry herself with the same measured warmth and professionalism. Engagements resumed, duties were fulfilled, speeches were delivered. Rarely did she allow the depth of her discomfort to show. The image presented was one of stability, even when her body was under immense strain. This contrast between public poise and private suffering became a defining feature of her role. Catherine learned early that her position demanded endurance, and she met that expectation repeatedly. While many praised her dedication, others quietly questioned the cost. Each canceled engagement sparked speculation, yet the reasons were often reduced to brief statements that barely hinted at the reality behind them. The pattern repeated across years. Illness managed discreetly, recovery handled away from view, responsibility resumed as soon as possible. That history matters now more than ever. It reveals that Catherine's current struggle did not emerge in isolation.
Just about happy, healthy children. This is about the society I hope we could and can become.
Her resilience has been tested long before cancer entered her life, and the discipline required to balance health with duty has been a constant presence. What the recent updates have done is peel back the surface, allowing the public to see that her calm demeanor has always been supported by immense inner effort. The question that lingers beneath this history is not accusatory, but human. How much strength should one person be expected to give, especially when the cost is physical and emotional well-being? Catherine has never publicly framed her experiences as sacrifice, yet her actions speak to a deep sense of responsibility that often outweighed personal comfort. It is a pattern that now casts her current recovery in a different light. As Prince William and King Charles acknowledge that the journey is ongoing, these earlier chapters of Catherine's life add crucial context. They remind us that her resilience was never effortless and that her ability to endure has been built slowly, through challenges faced quietly and often alone. The composed smile the public knows so well has always carried more weight than it revealed, and understanding that history makes the present moment feel not sudden, but deeply connected to everything that came before. Now, how did a hidden decision from Catherine's past quietly reshape the path ahead, leaving even the royals stunned? Keep watching. The day the path suddenly shifted. All of those earlier struggles, quietly endured and carefully managed, lead directly to the moment that reshaped everything. In early 2024, what was expected to be a planned abdominal surgery marked a turning point no one had anticipated. At the time, the procedure was described as necessary but routine, and there was no public indication that it would change the course of Catherine's life.
I've seen that experiences such as homelessness, addiction, and poor mental health.
The palace released limited information, asking for privacy, and many assumed this was another temporary pause, similar to the health challenges she had faced before and overcome. But behind the scenes, the outcome of that surgery delivered a devastating shock. Post-operative tests revealed cancer. The discovery came not as part of a long public battle, But suddenly, quietly, and without warning, for Catherine and her family, the ground shifted beneath them. What began as recovery from surgery became the beginning of an entirely new and frightening journey, one that demanded immediate focus, difficult decisions, and a complete re-evaluation of priorities. When Catherine eventually chose to share the news herself, she did so with remarkable restraint and honesty. Standing in Windsor Gardens, she recorded a deeply personal video message that would soon reach millions across the world. Her voice was calm but emotional, her words carefully chosen. She spoke about the surgery, the unexpected diagnosis, and the early stages of treatment that followed. There was no drama in her delivery, yet the impact was profound.
It's really important to stress it. We can't take a fatalistic outlook on this either, for those who haven't had.
Viewers could sense the effort it took to remain composed while revealing something so life-altering. The response was immediate and global. Messages of support poured in from across the United Kingdom and far beyond it. Social media fell unusually quiet as people watched, listened, and absorbed the weight of her announcement. For many, it was the first time they had seen such vulnerability from someone so often associated with stability and tradition. The silence that followed her message was not indifference. It was collective shock, empathy, and concern. In the days and weeks that followed, Catherine stepped away completely from public royal duties. There were no appearances, no engagements, no updates beyond what the palace deemed necessary. Her focus shifted entirely to treatment, rest, and time with her children. The absence was noticeable, and it underscored the seriousness of the situation more than any formal statement could have. This was no longer about balancing duty with discomfort. It was about survival, healing, and protecting what mattered most. For the royal family, this period marked a profound adjustment. The steady presence Catherine had long provided was suddenly missing from public life, and the reality of her illness reshaped the rhythm of the monarchy itself. For the public, it was a moment of reckoning, a reminder that behind titles and ceremonies are real people facing the same fears and uncertainties as anyone else. That early 2024 diagnosis did more than interrupt a schedule. It altered the narrative entirely. It transformed years of quiet endurance into a visible fight and redefined what strength would look like going forward. Everything that has followed, the remission, the cautious hope, the renewed concern, can be traced back to that single unexpected discovery when a routine procedure became the moment everything changed. So, did the palace truly brace for what no one saw coming? Or was a deeper secret quietly unfolding behind closed doors? Stay glued. When hope returned and quiet doubt followed. After the shock of early 2024 and the long months that followed, mid-2025 arrived, carrying something the public had been holding on to tightly: hope. When it was confirmed that Catherine's cancer was in remission, the news felt like a long-awaited breath after sustained tension. It did not erase what she had endured, but it offered reassurance that treatment had worked and that her body was responding. For many, it sounded like a turning of the page, the beginning of a gentler chapter after an exhausting fight. That optimism seemed to take shape when Catherine slowly began to reappear. There were no grand returns or packed schedules, just small, carefully chosen public moments. Each appearance was measured and cautious, yet deeply symbolic. Her presence alone was enough to calm nerves and restore confidence.
It is full of complex emotions of joy, exhaustion, love and worry, all mixed together.
She looked composed, dignified, and quietly determined, much as she always had. To the outside world, these brief moments suggested progress, stability, and a steady path forward. Gradually, a belief settled in that the worst might truly be over. Conversations shifted from concern to relief, from uncertainty to cautious celebration. The word remission carried weight, and many interpreted it as a signal that Catherine was moving beyond the most dangerous part of her journey. The silence that followed her return was different this time, not anxious, but hopeful. Then came Prince William's recent comments, and with them, a subtle but unmistakable shift. Without drama or alarm, he disrupted that sense of closure by speaking honestly about the reality Catherine continues to face. He acknowledged that despite remission, the strain has not disappeared. Physically and emotionally, the process remains demanding. His words reminded the public that recovery does not follow a straight, predictable line. Progress can exist alongside struggle, and good news does not cancel out difficult days. What made his admission so impactful was its timing. It arrived after hope had settled in, after many believed the hardest part was behind them. Instead of reinforcing that belief, William gently corrected it. He spoke of uneven days, some manageable, others overwhelming, pulling the narrative back into focus. The message was not one of setback, but of realism. Remission, he made clear, is not an ending. It is a phase within a much longer process. This renewed honesty stirred concern, not because it contradicted earlier updates, but because it added depth to them. It revealed what had been missing from the public understanding, that healing continues long after headlines fade, and that strength is still being demanded daily.
It is all too rarely discussed as a serious mental health condition.
Catherine's return to public view, once seen as confirmation of recovery, now appeared in a more nuanced light, as evidence of courage rather than completion. The resurfacing concern is rooted in this realization. It is not fear replacing hope, but awareness replacing assumption. William's words reframed the story, urging patience instead of conclusions. They asked the public to understand that progress can coexist with vulnerability, and that appearances, no matter how reassuring, rarely tell the full story. As optimism and uncertainty now sit side by side, the journey feels both more human and more fragile. Catherine's remission remains a powerful milestone, a moment of triumph that glimmers with hope, yet it no longer stands alone. It exists within a broader, ongoing process, one shaped by resilience, careful steps forward, and the recognition that healing is rarely linear. Each day carries its own set of challenges, moments of doubt, fleeting fears, and quiet weight of unspoken questions. And yet, within these tensions, there is a profound strength, a reminder that recovery unfolds in its own time, often quietly and without fanfare. It is measured not in grand gestures, but in the subtle, steadfast commitment to keep moving forward.
How Scotland's first dedicated design museum is already inspiring the next generation.
To face uncertainty with courage, and to embrace the delicate balance between hope and reality. But what if the truth they never expected begin to emerge, quietly unraveling the story they thought they already understood? Standing together when silence is no longer enough. As uncertainty resurfaced and hope became more measured, the focus shifted from Catherine alone to the family surrounding her. In the wake of Prince William's candid remarks, the palace moved to reinforce a message that had been implied but rarely stated so clearly. The royal family is closely united, alert, and deeply involved. Official confirmations made it clear that Catherine is not navigating this chapter in isolation. She remains in constant contact with those closest to her, supported not only in spirit, but through steady, ongoing presence. King Charles and Queen Camilla's position has been especially telling. The palace emphasized their unwavering support, a phrase that carries more meaning than it might appear. This was not a symbolic gesture or a routine line of reassurance. It reflected a level of personal concern that extends beyond public duty. The king's earlier comments about pride and closeness now felt less like comfort and more like context, helping the public understand why the family chose to speak with such care and openness. What became increasingly clear is that private concern has begun to outweigh the benefits of public restraint. For much of Catherine's journey, discretion had been the guiding principle. Silence was meant to protect her space, her children, and her ability to recover without constant scrutiny. But the renewed attention surrounding her health, combined with William's honest admissions, shifted that balance. The palace seemed to recognize that continued silence could now create more confusion than clarity. This is where the monarchy's protective instinct came into sharper focus. Historically, the royal family has often relied on distance and formality to manage difficult moments. In this case, however, the approach was different. Rather than withdrawing, they stood closer together, allowing carefully chosen details to emerge. The goal was not to invite speculation, but to guide understanding, to ensure the public grasped the seriousness without feeding fear. The visible unity also served another purpose. It reassured those watching that Catherine's well-being is being treated as a priority at every level of the family. Constant contact suggests ongoing monitoring, shared decisions, and emotional support that does not pause when cameras are gone. It reflects a family aware that strength sometimes means adjusting long-standing habits, including how much is shared and when. The palace's messaging during this period has been deliberate. Each word has been weighed, each statement restrained but meaningful. There is a recognition that transparency, when used carefully, can offer stability rather than uncertainty. By acknowledging concern instead of dismissing it, the family signaled respect for the public's investment while maintaining Catherine's dignity. What emerges from this moment is not alarm, but resolve. The royal family is standing visibly together now because the situation calls for unity rather than distance. Silence, once protective, no longer serves the same purpose. In its place, measured honesty steps forward, not to answer every question, but to anchor the narrative in truth.
Lots of people who are suffering with, addiction or poor mental health, and hearing time and time again that
As the family closes ranks, the message becomes clearer. Catherine's journey remains ongoing, and those closest to her are fully present for every step. The support is real, the concern is active, and the decision to speak reflects a recognition that understanding, when guided responsibly, can be as powerful as privacy. Now, what will happen when silence finally breaks and secrets long buried begin to surface, testing loyalties none expected? The quiet center, holding everything together. As the royal family stands more closely united than it has in years, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. At the emotional center of this moment is Catherine herself. Beyond titles, protocol, and public roles, she has long been the steady presence that grounds the family, often without drawing attention to herself. In times of celebration, she has offered warmth and calm. In times of strain, she has provided balance. Now, during one of the most fragile chapters the monarchy has faced in recent memory, that quiet influence feels more significant than ever. Catherine's role has never been about commanding the spotlight. Instead, it has been defined by consistency, empathy, and an ability to connect without spectacle. Those close to the family have often described her as a calming force, someone who listens carefully, responds thoughtfully, and brings a sense of normalcy to an institution shaped by tradition and pressure. That quality has taken on new meaning as her health journey continues, reminding many why her presence resonates so deeply with the public.
Who's led the centre and built many of the relationships here today.
It is in this content that comparisons to Princess Diana have resurfaced, not because Catherine seeks to mirror her, but because the similarities emerge naturally. Like Diana, Catherine possesses an instinctive empathy that cannot be rehearsed. It shows in the way she engages with people, in her attention to detail, and in the sincerity behind her actions. The connection is not rooted in style or image, but in emotional awareness, a shared ability to make others feel seen, even while carrying personal burdens. What makes this comparison especially poignant now is the contrast between Catherine's private vulnerability and her public composure. During the most uncertain moments of her illness, she has continued to embody dignity without distancing herself emotionally. Her announcement from Windsor Gardens, her careful return to public view after remission, and her continued absence when needed all reflect the same principle: honesty without excess, strength without performance. This chapter of her life has revealed a different kind of leadership, one defined not by speeches or authority, but by endurance. While King Charles and Prince William address the situation publicly, Catherine's influence remains quieter, woven into the family's unity rather than expressed through statements. Her strength has not been loud, yet it has shaped how the monarchy responds, how it communicates, and how it navigates uncertainty. Importantly, her journey is still unfolding. The palace has made it clear that remission does not mark an endpoint, and Catherine herself has never suggested otherwise. The ongoing nature of her recovery reinforces the reality that courage is not a single moment, but a sustained effort. Each day requires adjustment, patience, and resilience, qualities she has demonstrated repeatedly, long before this illness entered her life. For the public, Catherine represents something increasingly rare: steadiness without detachment. She does not invite attention through controversy or dramatization, yet she commands it through authenticity. That is why her absence has been felt so strongly, and why her gradual re-emergence carries such emotional weight. People do not simply see a royal figure returning. They see someone who has faced fear, stepped back when necessary, and continues forward with care. This is why Catherine matters beyond her role. She embodies a form of strength that is relatable, even within the distance of royalty. She shows that vulnerability and dignity are not opposites, and that resilience often looks like restraint rather than resistance. In a family navigating immense pressure, she remains the emotional anchor, not by holding everything together alone,
It has been an incredibly tough couple of months for our entire family.
but by reminding those around her what steadiness looks like. As the monarchy moves through this period of uncertainty with greater openness, Catherine's presence, whether visible or not, continues to shape the tone. Her journey has become a quiet thread connecting past challenges to present resolve. It invites reflection rather than conclusion, encouraging those watching to think differently about courage, compassion, and what it truly means to endure with grace when the path forward is still being written. So, what do you think? Are we witnessing quiet resilience at its strongest, or the beginning of an even deeper test the palace hasn't fully revealed? We'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.